Hey guys, this is Sander from Aeonica Music, and today I want to talk to you about mastering. So, as most of you know, mastering is the very important last stage of the music production process. Mastering ensures that the music reaches the right loudness level, has good dynamics and balance and presence, so that it's competitive compared to all of the other music that's out there, as well as, very importantly, that it sounds good on all of the different types of sound systems or devices that people will listen to your music on. Why spend so much time making music if you don't go through that important last process of getting it really to sound right for your audience? So whether people are listening on headphones or Sonos speakers or even a phone speaker, or they listen to it in a club, good mastering ensures that your music sounds good on all of those. It's also considered a dark art. Mastering is tricky, and I've spent 20 years trying to figure out the right way to master things. And today, basically, I want to share with you what I've learned, the different software and hardware units that I currently use in my mastering chain, some of the rationale behind those. I think this would be a benefit to anyone out there that's trying to master their own music. You might learn something that you can apply or at least try yourself. I certainly learned a lot from just listening to other people and testing things. But also, I hope that you will consider to have a professional master your music. I myself have other people master my music because it's very difficult to master your own music, even if you have the equipment, because after you've heard your own music 500 times, trying to then master that music in the same room as you produced it with the same ears, it's very difficult. So one thing is the experience and the equipment, and the other is the objectivity, why it's good to have your music mastered by other people. So I'm doing this as a commercial service. I do it for a very affordable rate, given the investment in the equipment that I have here. I'll put a link in the description where you can see about my mastering service. But today I will focus on which equipment I'm using. So I'll run through my studio, the hardware, as well as the kind of mastering, I wouldn't call it a template, but the workflow that I've devised in the different plugins that I'm using, the signal flow and so forth. So I'm sorry if that was a bit of a long introduction. I've been trying to keep things short and to the point, but yeah, that's the way it goes. Anyway, let's get on with it. So this is going to be a very quick tour of the studio. You can see instruments. I don't only master, I love to produce my own music. And here's where I sit. And we have the Genelex for monitoring with a sub under the table. I have the Neve Portico Master Bus processor for compression, saturation, and some stereo effects. I have a Manley Massive Passive Tube EQ, which I absolutely love. It sounds great on most things. Above that is the Carnaby HE2 harmonic EQ, and above that is the SPL Gemini for mid-side processing. I'm using a Better Maker version 2 limiter. And below that, you see my converter. So I have Crane Song and Burl converters, which give me options and sound great. Under that, you see my 500 modules, where the main one that I used today was the Neve 542 tape emulator and saturation, and the Prometheus from Wes Audio. I also use the Wes NG Bus compressor, which sounds great. For the Apollo, I'm not using the converters, I'm just using the software. And the heart of the studio is the patch, Flock Audio patch. I have 2 of them, and all of my equipment comes in and out via the patch, which gives me a lot of options. So here you see the control panel for the patch, the app. You can see that I've put in all of the equipment that I have, all of the inputs and outputs. Because I have 2 flocks, they're connected to each other, which makes it a bit complicated if you're looking at it for the first time. But you can see I have instruments that are plugged in there, and I've got all of my units. So that's the DAC, the DAC. I've got the Neve 542, the Carnaby HE2, the Wes audio compressor. That's the SPL Gemini, which converts into mid-side. So the Manley EQ is in mid-side. Then I've got the Neve Master Bus processor, the envelope that's from Elysia, the Better Maker, and the Then at the end, it's going into the Crane song Interstellar. But here you can see if I wanted to try the burl instead, I could just pop that in. If I wanted to turn off the Manley or move where the Neve 542s are sitting or where the Manley sits in the signal chain, it's quite straightforward to do, which is really cool. You can also set up like stored routing. So here you see the routing that I'm using while I do this voiceover. Which has microphones. Here you see one for a mix bus for electronic, so forth. So it's pretty easy for me to set stuff up. I call it mastering start. It's my starting point for mastering. But software, I'm using Universal Audio Luna. And the first thing I do is to use a signal generator, which is called Emo. I think from waves, just to see that the frequency response is right? So my signal path, my analog signal path, this is going through plugins and all the analog gear coming back in before it hits the meter. So you just want to check that nothing is off. Then the first thing I do is use Klanghelm. I want everything to come in at 0, and I put everything under 100 hertz in mono. And then I use a de-esser, which is Weiss, Deess. I don't know how to pronounce that. I can try a couple others, I like to try different plugins and see if sometimes something else sounds better for a particular track. If there are sub-problems, I like to use infrasonic. In this track that we did today, or that we're going to do today, there were no problems, so I only used Weiss EQ1. And I only do subtractive EQ to start with, and I might come back to that EQ after you've done the rest of the chain, right? So EQs always interact, and I use more than one, so you can't just set it and forget about it. I experiment with stuff like this, like Ozone. I haven't liked the results so far, so it's just there because I tried it, but I might try something like the TC Electronic System 6000 and see if, for example, I turn off the EQ and just use the multiband compressor if there are balance problems. But in this track, there are no balance problems, so I haven't needed to use that. Turn it off. I might use clipping before going to analog. In this case, I didn't. Here are the analog processors which have digital control. So I have the Pandora, which is a multiband processor. Didn't use it today. This is the control for the HE2, the harmonic EQ. I did use that. This is for the West Audio RIA, Varimu Tube EQ. Didn't use it today. This is the NG bus compressor, which I did use, and you'll see what that sounded like. Here is the Prometheus from West Audio. We did use that. And here's the Better Maker mastering limiter, which we did use. And you'll be able to hear in the video what these are doing, hopefully. But I just want to explain to you the different units that I have in the chain, and maybe I need a different video to go into detail of why I picked one unit over the other or so forth. I then record the audio into an analog return, and that analog return, after it has been recorded, goes through a clipper. So I usually try Flatline, which I really like. I think it's a very simple clipper. And Schwab's Gold Clip. So these two clippers sound a lot different, and I'll just see which one works for the particular track. And then I also have a bunch of different limiters lined up, right? So I have the TC Electronic Brick Wall, which I find very transparent, very, very neutral. I've got Limitless, which is amazing. It's got so many parameters, and it's actually 2 limiters in one and a clipper. I find it preserves transients very well. But I do find that in the most cases, I'm using Ozone's maximizer in IRC1. It seems to be the best balance. I also sometimes try the L2 to check loudness. I'm using Ozone Insight as well as the ADPTR-AB metric, which is a must-have for mastering. I don't think I've demonstrated it very well in this video, but it's pretty simple to use. But you can have reference tracks and really compare your track to reference tracks in terms of loudness and balance, and compare between the two of them in the push of a button, which helps you to kind of mold your sound around other sound that you know is a good example. And doing that not only using your ears, but using frequency analyzers is important. I've got the Flux spectrum analyzer that you see in the screen as well, which I think is one of the prettiest ones. So I think people like it because it looks great, but it's got a lot of information. I would tend not to only use one analyzer. Look at a couple of them and see which one works for you. Obviously, we want to look at our loudness. We want to look at Luft's RMS. We want to look at what the peak is, as well as the integrated values and Hi guys, so I think this was quite representative of a typical mastering session for me. You could see I needed to go through the mix a couple of times to set up the plugins and the settings on the hardware. I hope that it's clear to you kind of which type of plugins that kind of the signal flow and hardware units. I hope that you could hear the changes as I made them, as well as I can hear them here in the room. We'll have to see how well it translates to the video. Typically at this stage, I have let's say a first version master. I would then check that on VSX headphones, right? VSX are headphones with software that allows you to emulate the sound of different environments, which I find quite useful for checking the balance of mixes and masters. I would probably listen to it on a couple of other, like in the living room, for example, Sonos speakers, and get feedback from my client. So in this case, my friend Mikki was kind enough to let me use his track here as an example, and he had quite a clear vision for how he wants the track to sound. So what I've shared here today in this video is not the final product. It was more to run you through the process and that you see what type of plugins and maybe hear the effect of changing some of the parameters in the video. So anyway, I hope that this was helpful. Feel free to subscribe to the channel or ask me questions. And with that, take care. Peace, everyone.